I'm Charlie, a Charlie Book Fanatic. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to talk to you about my least favorite books of 2018. Last week I did a video talking about my favorite books of 2018. I will link that down below if you're also interested in that. I had about 5 favorites I talked about in that video, and I'm going to talk about 8 of my least favorite books because I had more of those, sadly. The first book I want to talk about is one of the first books I read in 2018, and that is the book Sad Girls by Lang Leav. Lang Leav is actually a poet, and Sad Girls was her debut novel, and I really wanted to read that because I love Lang Leav's poetry. I especially loved her poetry collection called The Universe of Us. I have a review of that up. I will link that down below if you're interested in that. It's one of my favorite poetry collections of all time, and I obviously wanted to read her debut novel because I loved her writing. And then I ended up reading Sad Girls, and it is probably one of my least favorite books ever. I was super disappointed. It has a very generic plot. The writing didn't live up to what I expected of it. I expected it to have a very lyrical writing style, and that is definitely not what the book had. It was just a general writing style. It wasn't really written in verse. It just... I don't know what I expected. I knew the book wasn't going to be in verse, but I expected more from the writing, especially because I love Lang Leav's poetry. It's very simplistic. You can relate to almost every poem she writes, and the book just didn't do it for me. I couldn't relate to it. I just didn't see anything of Lang Leav's beautiful writing in there, and it just disappointed me a whole lot, and I don't think I'm going to read any of Lang Leav's other novels. I know that sounds very harsh, but I think I will stick to her poetry because her debut novel disappointed me that much. Another book that disappointed me a lot, and I actually skim read at the end of the book, basically kind of DNF'd. There were only like 50 pages left. It was Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. I know a lot of people love this book, but it just didn't sit right with me. I wasn't enjoying the book in the first place, but I continued on with it because I expected the book to get better at some point, and I had heard a lot of good things about it, so I definitely expected something to happen still. But the one thing that felt most iffy about this book was the fact that our main character Jacob fell in love with his grandfather's ex-girlfriend. I know it sounds very weird, and it is, but the whole premise of the book is Jacob's grandfather dies, and Jacob goes back to his grandfather's home country of Wales to go back to the orphanage he once lived in. There Jacob goes into a time loop, and he discovers that the children that his grandfather was once stuck with in this orphanage are actually still alive in this time loop. His grandfather decided to get out of this time loop and grow old, but these children are all still there. They all have some specific kind of supernatural power. And Jacob falls in love with all of these people with their different powers, and he actually falls in love with his grandfather's ex-girlfriend, who was still a kid at this point. I also didn't really like the whole gimmick of pictures being inserted. The pictures were definitely freaky, but the pictures of the girl that was supposed to be his grandfather's ex-girlfriend weren't really correct. Like, she was different ages in every single picture, and it didn't really line up with the whole story. I don't even know what age she was supposed to be. I think she was supposed to be 15, and I think she was also on the cover of the book, but she seems like 9 on the cover. Since she's in a time loop, she doesn't grow older, and I don't entirely understand what was happening with these pictures there. I'm not going to continue on with this series because I just didn't enjoy the first book, and I skim read the end of it because I was kind of interested still in what was happening, but even that disappointed me, and ultimately maybe decided I did not want to continue on with this series. The next book I want to talk about is a book that disappointed me so much. It is Invictus by Ryan Graden. This is a standalone sci-fi novel. I loved Ryan Graden's Wolf by Wolf duology. It's one of my favorite series of all time, and I decided to read more books by Ryan Graden, so I read her book The Walled City, which also disappointed me, I think, back in 2017, and then Invictus came out in 2018, and I decided to read it, and it definitely disappointed me. Invictus is based upon this time-traveling trope. One thing I do not like in anything, movies, books, anything, is time travel. And I always expect that my favorite authors will make me think differently about it, but it never really happens. I think I just do not like time travel. It was kind of unfair of me to expect that Ryan Graden would change my mind, but I definitely gave this book a try. I finished the entire thing. I did not DNF it, but it just wasn't my thing, honestly. I didn't like the characters that much. I did not like the whole idea of the story, and the writing wasn't on par with her Wolf by Wolf duology. And I don't know if I want to read other books by Ryan Graden. Maybe if the synopsis is interesting enough, but the fact is just that I didn't like any of her other books besides the Wolf by Wolf duology, so I don't know whether I want to give other books a try. Maybe if it's something similar to a Wolf by Wolf duology, like more historical fiction wise, because Invictus was a sci-fi, but I'll have to see about that. And I'll see what she brings out next and whether I want to read that or not. Earlier in 2018 I got a request from an author if I wanted to review her poetry collection called Every Watering Word. The author is Tanya Manning-Yard, and I decided to read that poetry collection. I also posted a review of that one, which I will link down below, and I just didn't like it. I didn't get some of the poems. I'll tell you all about it in the review. There were some poems I actually liked, but most of them I just couldn't connect to, and that is just why I didn't like the poetry collection. And I think that is completely fair, honestly. It's one of my least favorite books of 2018 because I need to relate to poetry for it to do something for me, and in this case it just didn't, and that is why this poetry collection did not click with me and why it is on this list in the first place. Another one of my favorite authors that disappointed me was Jennifer Niven with her Aquanet Diaries. Jennifer Niven's All the Bright Places is one of my favorite books of all time. I've liked some of her other work, and I decided to try her autobiography about her life in high school, which is called The Aquanet Diaries. It's one of her first books ever. She was still a little younger when she wrote it, and I just didn't care about it. I felt like she was way too self-indulgent, way too obsessed with herself, with the people she was going to high school with. She was name-dropping all of these people that I had no clue about. I didn't know any of them because I did not go to high school with her. The book was made of all of these chapters relating to some kind of subject like tests or something like that, school, boyfriends, relationships. I expected more from Jennifer Niven because I've loved her writing in the past. It really did something for me, and I expected something more because I also thought it was going to be about her life after high school, but it was just a high school experience, and a high school experience wasn't anything different than the usual high school student. Like, she didn't really experience anything out of the ordinary, and that is why that made this book so boring, because she acted in the book like she was some peculiar, extraordinary kind of student, but her life was just the same as anyone else. That doesn't really make for a good autobiography or a good book in general. Like, it was a waste of time to be reading it, to be honest. I also want to talk about this manga that definitely disappointed me, and it was the manga Shakespeare called Romeo and Juliet by Richard Epicnanesi, and this is a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, but not really a retelling. It is drawn in this manga style. The text, like the words from the play, were literally taken from the play and just inserted into this book with these manga drawings, and it felt surprisingly lazy. I also talk about this in my December wrap-up, which I will also link down below because I read this in December. It was the last book I read in 2018, and it just was so sad. I needed one more book to get my 80 book goal for 2018, and this was the book I read, and it just wasn't good. I was glad I reached my goal, but I just expected something more. I expected more effort put into it, and that just wasn't the case. If this is set in modern day Tokyo, I expected some modern day language, and that is just not what this was. It was just using Shakespeare's words, and that is okay if it was set in a more old school setting, and now it was just modern day Tokyo with people saying things like, "Give me my longsword, ho." Other books that were still some of my least favorite books that I don't really know a lot about anymore. I read them earlier in the year and they weren't extraordinary enough to stick out in my mind right now, but the books are Every Last Lie by Mary Kubica, which is a mystery thriller. I know Mary Kubica is a very popular mystery thriller author, and this was the first book I read by her. I don't know if it's well loved or not, but I definitely didn't like it. I felt like it was way too predictable, and the whole plot was just circling around and around, and I really got nothing out of it. And the other book is Blackfish City by Sam J. Miller. I got this book as an e-arc, I believe, and I was really excited about it. It had this beautiful cover, the synopsis sounded super interesting, and then I read it and it was just bad. Like, I didn't get how the whole plot was supposed to come together. Execution of the idea was not good. I expected something more from that. The idea was amazing, and I feel like that happens a lot for me with Sam J. Miller. I also read another book by him, and it's just that I like his ideas, but I feel like he's not executing them very well, and I also didn't really like the writing. So I think Sam J. Miller is just not a good fit for me, and I should move on to someone else and better works for me. These are my least favorite books of 2018. Let me know down below if you agree or disagree with me, or what were some of your least favorite books of 2018. I would love to know. Thanks for watching. Goodbye!